Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. For Gandhari, the one who was responsible for the war was Krishna. She believed that he could have stopped the war, but he did not. But there are other characters who looked at the war from other perspectives. Consider Yudhishthira. For Yudhishthira, the person most responsible for the war was Draupadi, and it was Sahadev also who to a great extent was responsible for the war. This is how Yudhishthira looked at the war. This happened, Yudhishthira said, when the Pandavas were on the mount, where the Pandavas were climbing the Himalayas, it was very cold and it was snow, and it was full of snow. So Draupadi was the first to fall. Now when Draupadi fell, Bhima asked Yudhishthira to stop for a while and wait for Draupadi to recover so that they could proceed again. Yudhishthira said no. Draupadi was a great sinner and death was perfectly, and Draupadi was a great sinner and she had to die. There was no reason to show any sympathy towards Draupadi. Now Bhima was surprised. He asked him why he was saying why he said what he said. Yudhishthira said that for long years this woman kept her hair untied and tied her hair only after 19 brothers of his were killed. When Dushasana was killed, only Duryodhana was left. So 99 Kaurava brothers had been killed. And for Yudhishthira, the Kaurava brothers were not just cousins. They were not cousins, they were brothers. Yudhishthira most often in Mahabharata most often in Sarla Mahabharata, Yudhishthira used very endearing expressions for Duryodhana. Sometimes he would say that Duryodhana was dearer to him than Bhima. He was genuinely affectionate. He did not, a man of dharma, he did not distinguish between cousins and brothers. So the sons of Dhritarashtra were brothers to him as were his brothers, his own brothers. So he said that Draupadi was responsible by keeping her hair untied. She constantly reminded of the Pandavas. She constantly reminded the Pandavas of her humiliation and indirectly prompted them to take revenge. Therefore, Draupadi was responsible for the war. What about Sahadev? So Bhima left. Bhima didn't understand what Yudhishthira was saying, but all the same, he left Draupadi and proceeded along, followed Yudhishthira. Then fell Sahadev, and Yudhishthira said, leave Sahadev behind. He was a great sinner. You leave him behind. So he asked Yudhishthira, how was Sahadev a sinner? Yudhishthira said, to a considerable extent, Sahadev was also responsible for the war. He did not say it so directly, he said it indirectly, but this was very clear from what he said. He said this Sahadev, he knew the past, he knew the future. Bhuta Bhavishya Jnata. He had the knowledge of the Bhuta, the past, and Bhavishya, the future. But he would sit quiet. Unless somebody asked him something, he would not say anything. Now, had he told us what was going to happen, the Dyuta Krida, the game of dice, would not have happened, and nothing that happened later would have happened. So his silence, his not speaking up when he should have spoken up and warned us about the impending disasters, it is for that he should be responsible. So that was Sahadev. Now, he did not hold Bhima directly responsible for the war, but for the worsening of relationship between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, he often held Bhima responsible. The word that both Yudhishthira and Kunti used for Bhima was dusta, wicked. And Kunti more than once told Bhima that it was because of him that the relationship between the Kauravas and the Pandavas was worsening. So, since worsening of the relationship could be considered to be a remote cause of the war, so we could consider Bhima in the spirit of Sarala Mahabharata to be possibly partly responsible for the war, at least going by the spirit of what Yudhishthira was saying in Swargarona Parva as they were climbing up the mountain of the Mount Himalayas. They were climbing up the mountain Himalayas. So that was Sahadeva and Bhima. Come to Shakuni. Shakuni himself, as we pointed out earlier, Shakuni himself considered himself responsible for the war. He told Sahadev in so many words when Sahadev asked him to return to his kingdom and rule, because on the 17th because by then, that is the 17th day of the war, all the Kaurava brothers had been killed and the Kaurava army had been virtually destroyed. The great warriors on their side had fallen and the war was virtually over. Only Duryodhana remained, and Duryodhana was to fall either today or tomorrow, that kind of situation. Therefore, he should go back and rule. Then Sahadev told him that no, what he had done was wrong. He was responsible for the war, and because of him, many great warriors of whom Aryavarta was proud, they had all fallen. It was a greatly destructive war. And not only that, it is true that he had to take revenge against the Kaurava brothers. He had accomplished his purpose. That was one aspect. But the other aspect was that he was the uncle, Mama. As a Mama, he should have given the Kauravas protection. And Duryodhana trusted him. Therefore, he had committed a great sin, grievous sin, by getting his own nephews killed. He was a sinner, he said. I am a sinner, said Shakuni, and the only way, the only thing that remained for him was to get killed in the war. So Shakuni considered himself to be responsible for the war. Now, what did Vishma think? What did Arjuna think? Arjuna thought that the Kauravas were solely responsible for the war. They had thrust a war on the Pandavas, who were not willing to go for a war. There was a conversation between Bhishma and Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Bhishma and Arjuna met for the first time when Bhishma and Arjuna met for the first time in the battlefield of Kurukshetra as enemies, Arjuna told him, "Look, grandfather, what a miserable situation in which I am placed. I have to fight you, and for all this, the Kauravas are responsible. They have thrust a war on us, and I will have to fight you, and what greater misfortune can there be for me?" Bhishma said, "No, think a little. Do not blame the Kauravas alone for the war." He said, "If you really wanted peace, there are ways for that. There are ways in which you could have ensured that peace prevailed and war did not take place." He said, "Commitment to peace cannot be partial." He said, "You could not say that we would have peace only if you give us one village, 5 villages, whatever. So give us 5 villages or give us at least one village and we will go for peace. We will opt for peace. Don't give us that, we will fight." He said, this is not a true commitment to peace. The commitment to peace has to be total. If the Kaurava brothers are unwilling to give you even a single village, and if you are really committed to peace, you Pandavas would have left for the forest, allowing Duryodhana to rule. If you had done that, then that would have meant that you really were committed to the cause of peace, but you are not. Therefore, do not blame the Kauravas alone. Do not think that they were the ones who were responsible for the war, that they had thrust a war on you. You are also partly responsible. So that was his point of view. In fact, the same thing was said. The same thing had been said to Yudhishthira by Shakuni before the war started. One day the war preparations were going on, and Shakuni told Yudhishthira that he being a man of virtue and an embodiment of dharma on earth, he should not fight his brothers. War would not be right. What he should do is, he should leave the kingdom to Duryodhana to rule, and he, along with his brothers and wife, should retire to the forest again, should go back to the forest. Shakuni told him that, look, Duryodhana was an ignoramus. He was inclined to adharma, and such persons may enjoy all the pleasures of the world, but after death, in the next life, they suffer. Therefore, but those who are followers of dharma, they may suffer in this life, but they enjoy the fruits of the karma, virtuous karma, in Swarga and later as they are born again. Therefore, Duryodhana being a sinner, let him enjoy whatever he wishes to, let him enjoy the kingdom, but his future after his death would be dark. But what about you? You are a man of dharma, therefore you should consider this and not agree to fight a war. Yudhishthira dismissed Shakuni summarily with disdain and said, Go, mama, ja, mamu, go, mama, say all this to Duryodhana. Let him go for pilgrimage now, and let us rule Hastinapura now for a change, and let him go on pilgrimage. During the last 12 years, I have been to many places of pilgrimage, and it is Duryodhana's turn to do that now. So he was dismissive about Shakuni's proposal, but what Bhishma said on the battlefield to Arjuna was essentially what Shakuni had said to Yudhishthira. Perhaps if instead of Shakuni, Bhishma had said that to Yudhishthira, or maybe Krishna, or maybe somebody who Yudhishthira trusted, if somebody else would have, or their family priest Dhaumya, or Guru Drona, maybe if one of them had said this to Yudhishthira, we do not know. He might have given it much more consideration than what he did to the words of Shakuni. So it was not content that mattered to Yudhishthira at that point of time. It was who was saying what he was saying about the conditions for peace. So this is at one level. Now let us look at things from another level. Just imagine if the Pandavas had not gone to the forest for 12 years and were not compelled to go to live incognito for a 13th year. Had this not happened, had the Pandavas not been exiled for these long years, probably the war might not have taken place, we do not know. Surely the exile for 12 years and the incognito living for the 13th year must have made things worse. But why did the Pandavas have to do that? Why did they go on exile for 12 years and incognito for the 13th year? What does Sarala say about this? Now let us see. After the first game of dice was played, in which there was an attempt to disrobe Draupadi, and Yudhishthira had lost all his wealth and everything, and his brothers, Dhritarashtra, as the eldest in the family, or as the Kuru elder, had returned everything to Pandavas. When Dhritarashtra asked Draupadi to ask for boons, as the first boon, she said that her husbands had become slaves to Duryodhana after losing the game of dice, so they should be set free from that slavery. And Dhritarashtra was happy. He said, I am most willing, so Pandavas are free. Your husbands are all free. What about the second? He said, ask again. And she asked for whatever the Pandavas had lost in terms of wealth. He gave them, Dhritarashtra gave everything to them. He said, ask for something more, my daughter. She said, no, it would not be nice, it would be against dharma to ask for a third boon, these two boons were sufficient for her. Now remember that when Dhritarashtra was returning all this, he was not returning these things to the Pandavas as the king of Hastinapura. Please remember that by then Duryodhana had become the king of Hastinapura, and Dhritarashtra was only the Kuru elder, the retired king, the Kuru elder. So he returned everything. And in Sarala Mahabharata, the Pandavas were happy, and there was good feeling between the Kauravas and the Pandavas when the Pandavas left and returned to when the Pandavas returned to Varunamanta, where they were living. They were happy. The brothers parted with good feelings. Then what happened was, unlike in Vyasa Mahabharata, no one invited the Pandavas to go again and play the game of dice for the second time. That story in Vyasa Mahabharata is well known. Duryodhana was very unhappy. He insisted that the Pandavas be invited again, and the Pandavas were invited to play the game of dice. And it was part of Kshatriya Dharma not to say no to a game of dice. At least that is an understanding that some texts give us. So he went and played the game of dice, and again with the magic with the magic stick of Shakuni, and lost. But this is not what happened here. In Sarala Mahabharata, what happened was something else. Yudhishthira himself was not happy. He wanted to, he was not happy that he had lost the game of dice with Shakuni. He himself wanted to play again, and without anyone inviting him to return to Hastinapura to play the second game of dice, he himself went. And this time, his brothers and Draupadi, they all went with him. So they went there, and Yudhishthira said that he wanted to play the game of dice again. So what are the wages? What would be the wager? What would be at stake? That is what had to be decided. It was Yudhishthira's proposal that whoever lost would retire to the forest and live as an exile for 12 years. It was not the proposal of either Shakuni or any Kaurava. It was not the proposal of Duryodhana or any of his brothers. It was Yudhishthira's own proposal. And what was it based on? The argument, the logic was that the kingdom, that it cannot be the case that in the kingdom there will be two contenders for the same throne. So one would rule, and the other would live in exile in the forest. A very sensible approach. Otherwise, constantly they would be fighting among themselves, and there will be a lot of bad blood. So it was a sensible approach, I think. In any case, the proposal that the loser would go to the forest for 12 years was Yudhishthira's proposal, was the proposal of Yudhishthira himself. So Duryodhana agreed, and he said that Shakuni would play on my behalf, and of course Yudhishthira was to play. He would play for himself. So that was how it was. Now, what Shakuni did was, he added the 13th year. He added this 13th year condition that whoever lost would also spend an additional year in incognito. And if he is discovered during that year, then he would go for exile for another 12 years and a 13th year of living incognito. So this condition was added by Shakuni, but to Yudhishthira's proposal, So that was how it was. So please let us note that all this did not happen because of any initiative from the Kaurava side, unlike what we find in Vyasa Mahabharata. To repeat this, it was Yudhishthira's proposal. It was Yudhishthira who went uninvited on his own to Hastinapura to play the game of dice. It was his proposal that the loser would go to the forest for 12 years. Shakuni added the 13th year and the stringent condition and the very difficult condition that if the person is found in the 13th year, the person will go in exile for another 12 years and an additional 13th year of living in incognito. So that was how it was. Now, who rolled the dice? Who would roll the dice? Somebody would call, but who would roll the dice? That stick. They said that Duryodhana said, please note, Duryodhana said that let it be Sahadev this time. So it was not Shakuni this time in the second game of dice. It was not Shakuni who played, who rolled the dice for him. His proposal was that Sahadev would do it. For Yudhishthira it was fine. But then Yudhishthira at that point of time said that, look, Mama, look, Uncle, I am not going to play with the dice that you have. These are magical dice. This is magical. The stick that you have is magical. I don't want to play with that stick. So what would happen? And then in Sala Mahabharata, the following happens. The sticks fell from somewhere, as though they fell from the sky. Nobody knows where they came from, but suddenly two sticks fell there. And Duryodhana said that, look, these are not our sticks, so they have come from somewhere. So probably these are sacred sticks for that reason. So we will play this with these sacred sticks, with these sacred sticks. Let us take these sticks to be given by dharma, given by dharma, and we play with these sticks. Since we do not know where they came from, it is quite possible that they will determine they will determine what dharma wants to be determined, what dharma wants. In any case, so the sticks fell, and with those sticks, Sahadev rolled the dice. Now, Sahadev deliberately rolled the dice so that Yudhishthira loses. This is something which one does not find in Vyasa Mahabharata. It was deliberate on the part of Sahadev to ensure that Yudhishthira loses. Why did he do that? Sahadev was not an ordinary person. That we know. We just mentioned that he was Bhuta Bhavishya Jnata. He was the knower of the past and the future. He knew what the cosmic purpose was. And both Duryodhana had great trust on Sahadeva, as did Yudhishthira. So, if Duryodhana had not had that trust on Sahadeva, he would not have said that on my behalf this time not Shakuni but Sahadev would play. Shakuni was an onlooker this time. He had no role to play except for that condition, except for making that condition, and nothing to do. So why did Sahadev deliberately ensure that his own brother lost and they all go for exile for 12 years and a difficult 13th year condition they had to accept and for a 13th year in incognito? Why did he do that? Because Sahadev knew what the gods wanted. He knew that the gods wanted the Pandavas to lose and for the Pandavas to go on exile. What was the purpose of the gods? Why did the gods want this? The gods wanted that to happen because that way Kichaka had to be killed. Kichaka could not be killed by anyone There are very few who could equal Kichaka. Kichaka was the commander-in-chief of the Virat, in the kingdom of Virata. There are three persons who could kill Kichaka. One was Balram, but Balram would not. Why should Balram come and kill Kichaka? There was no reason for Balram to engage himself in a fight with Kichaka. Then Jarasandha, he could have killed Kichaka, but by then Jarasandha was dead. So the third person who remained and who could kill Kichaka was Bhima. So the gods wanted Bhima to kill Kichaka. And how would that happen? It would happen if Bhima and Kichaka meet, and it would happen if the Pandavas go on exile. That would create a condition for a meeting between Bhima and Kichaka, and the rest of the story we know. Kichaka had an evil eye on Draupadi. Draupadi complained to Bhima, so Bhima went and killed Kichaka. So that story we know, and that is the same in both the Mahabharata, both the versions of Mahabharata, Vyasa Mahabharata and Sarla Mahabharata. So let us note that it was Sahadev who sided with the gods, who knew the cosmic purpose, who knew what the gods wanted, and he sided with the gods and ensured that his brothers lost. No one knew this. Sahadev never said this to anybody. Yudhishthira did not know that he had been, in a way, betrayed by Sahadeva. Had he known, maybe the man of dharma that he was, he would still have understood, but no one ever told Yudhishthira what Sahadeva had done. So can we say that at another level, Sahadeva was responsible for the war? Had those 13 years not happened, then maybe the Pandavas would not have gone for a war. We don't know. I mean, that could never be said in any conclusive terms. That could not be said. But at least there would have been a question mark. Would they have gone for a war or not? Had those 12 years not happened. So that was one. And the second one was, see, there is no character in Sarla Mahabharata who is more unfortunate than Shakuni. Shakuni was condemned in a way to get the Kauravas killed. Shakuni had to get the Kauravas killed, and his father had put this huge responsibility on his head. His father had said that he had to take revenge and get the Kauravas destroyed. That's a story which we will come to later. But let us note this at this stage, that before his death, his father had told him that he had to take revenge and he had to get the Kaurava brothers killed. But of course, Shakuni, what could he do alone? So he had to resort to manipulation, to treachery, and to all these devices to get Duryodhana and his brothers killed, which is what he did. So, what do we say about Shakuni? Wasn't he responsible for the war? He himself agreed, but not many held Shakuni. But in Sarla Mahabharata, not many characters considered Shakuni to be responsible for the war. Maybe in some other version of Mahabharata, the characters would say that Shakuni was responsible for the war, but not in Vyasa Mahabharata, but not in Sarla Mahabharata. Not many characters said that Shakuni was the one who was primarily responsible for the war. No. But we know now that Shakuni was committed to the war. He had an unfortunate burden that he was carrying, his father's orders that he had to get the Kauravas killed. And one single individual, he had nothing. The Kauravas had Vishma, Drona, Karna, and who not, the greatest of warriors in Aryavarta. What could Shakuni do? So he had to do devious things and play treachery and be treacherous to Duryodhana. So that is what. So Shakuni was responsible for the war because he had to do, because he was condemned to ensure the Kauravas' destruction. Now look at Krishna. What did Krishna do? Gandhari asked Krishna, why did you allow this war to happen? Why did you get all my children killed? Krishna gave a reply which I have not found satisfactory, but my opinion doesn't matter. But let's see what Krishna himself had said. Krishna said that I was humiliated in the Kaurava court when I went there as Yudhishthira's emissary. Duryodhana and the Kauravas had humiliated me, so I took revenge against them by using the Pandavas. This is what is said. But well, let us accept that that was one explanation that he gave, whether it is satisfactory or not. But let's look at it at another level, returning to that other level of looking for who were all responsible for the war. Now let's see what happened one day. One day, before the war was to start soon, one night, late night, Sahadeva, Krishna and Shakuni met. Everything was decided. The war would take place. The battlefield was divided into two parts. On one part the Pandavas would stay, on the other part the Kaurava army would stay. So all that work had been done. The war was it was certain that the war was going to take place. And that late night, Krishna, Sahadeva, and Shakuni met. In the conversation that took place among them, Sahadeva said nothing. It was a conversation between Shakuni and Krishna. Krishna told Shakuni, should the war happen or should it not happen? Should the war take place or should the war not take place? Shakuni said, look, whatever you want me to do, I will do. You do not want the war to take place? Tell me. I will go and make sure that by morning, it was already late night, by morning the Kauravas and Pandavas would be friends. I will do that. You order me, I do this. But before you do that, before you give me that order, that command, whatever is your command, I will do. But before you give me that command, please remember the purpose of your avatar. Why have you taken avatar? There is a cosmic purpose. There is a purpose for which you have come. Please remember the cosmic purpose. Please remember the purpose of your taking avatar before you tell me what to do. He said that, have you forgotten that the Pandavas and me, we are your attendants in Vaikuntha. We are your attendants. We will obey your orders. We are here to do that. We are here together to ensure that your avataric purpose is fulfilled. Now tell us. So Krishna says, all right, let the war take place. Now notice this very interesting thing. Krishna, this very interesting thing. To me it is very important and interesting. Now look at Krishna. The God says, the avatar says that, look, you decide whether the war take place or not. It is a human war. Let the humans decide their own fate. You decide whether the war would take place or not. And Shakuni says, I do not want to take that responsibility. I am a mere human, and I am your attendant, I am your slave. I am your attendant, I am your servitor. Therefore, let the decision be not the decision of the humans, let it be the decision of the avatar. Okay, so that is what he said. And of course, the war had to take place. Before that, something else had happened, which again involved Sahadev and Krishna. When Yudhishthira asked Krishna to go as his emissary to the court of Duryodhana and plead for a village, so that there would be no war between the brothers, Yudhishthira went to each Pandava brother. He went to Bhima and asked Bhima, and he went to Bhima, he met Bhima and said that, look, I am going as Yudhishthira's emissary to the Kaurava court for peace. The condition is that Yudhishthira wants one village. If one village Duryodhana gives, then there will be no war. That's what Yudhishthira is asking me to do. Bhima said, no, one village is too little, so ask for two. He goes to Arjuna. Arjuna says, ask for three. He goes to Nakula, and what Nakula says is very interesting. Nakula says that, look, so long as we are together, we are in difficulty, we are passing through difficult days, the Pandavas, the sons of Kunti and the sons of Madri were all together. But who knows? After all, Yudhishthira, Bhima and Arjuna, they are our step brothers. Who knows what would happen in times of prosperity? See, in times of difficulty, people are together. In times of prosperity, brothers fight among themselves. So that is the problem of prosperity. Difficulty actually binds people. Prosperity separates people, make brothers enemies. So who knows what would happen? Ask for me and my brother Sahadev. Ask for two more villages. So 3 villages for the Pandavas, for the sons of Kunti, and 2 villages for the sons of Madri. That is what Nakula said. An interesting perspective here, something that is unimaginable in Vyasa Mahabharata. This interesting perspective that after all we are stepchildren, we are the step brothers. Who knows what would happen when the days of prosperity come? Then finally he goes to Sahadev and asks Sahadev what would he want. This is what his brothers had said. What would he want? Sahadev did not say anything. He is the Bhuta Bhavishya Jnata, the knower of the past and the future. He knew that whatever Krishna wanted would happen. Whatever his brothers say or whatever happens in the Kaurava court, nothing would matter. Krishna's will prevail, because that is the cosmic will. That would prevail. So he did not get into this trap of Krishna. He told Krishna that, look, whatever you want will happen, but if you really want the war to take place, then I would tell you something because of which I will tell you something, and that would ensure that the war would take place. If you want the war to take place, ask Duryodhana for 5 villages, and he named the villages. He said, if you ask for these villages, Duryodhana would never give them, because they are ungivable. So ask for the impossible, ask for the ungivable. You will never get them, and thereby you will ensure the war. You would ensure that the war would take place. So look at Sahadev. He knew what was happening. He knew what was to happen. So he would not get into Krishna's Maya by saying, I want a 5th village or whatever, or give me one more village. He won't get into that illusion. So he only helped Krishna in the fulfillment of his avataric duties, namely ensure that the dushta are destroyed and the shishta remain. Virtue wins and wickedness, sinfulness die. So that is that was the avataric purpose. Okay. So so that's an angle. Okay. So now we see that at one level there are people who could be said to be responsible for the war. Gandhari had one perspective, Yudhishthir had another, Arjuna had a third, and Vishma had a fourth, Shakuni had a fifth. So there are different. So they considered somebody or other, or Shakuni himself responsible for the war. But at another level, war had to take place. It was not in the hands of Yudhishthira. It was not in the hands of Vishma or Arjuna. The war had to take place because that was the purpose of Krishna's avatar. So the war had to take place. So it is like this. There is the cosmic purpose. Some humans who are spiritually evolved, like Sahadev, like Vyasa, like Agastya, they know the purpose and they try and be and they understand the purpose and do not try to resist it. But there are others who do not know, so they act as ordinary human beings. So now we can see, so this is so we have looked at the causes of war or the responsibilities that could be placed on somebody for the war from two different perspectives. Okay, if it is a cosmic purpose, no one is responsible. It had to happen. But if you forget that aspect, then we know, who was responsible, who said what. Maybe I will bring one thing to your attention. Could the war have been avoided? I mean, we know that it would not have been. It couldn't be avoided because that was what it was destined to take place. It was the cosmic purpose, that Krishna ensures that the sinners are destroyed and the virtuous win. So it had to take place. But there is an interesting incident that is of relevance here. That was the sixth day of Bhishma's. That was the sixth day of the war, and Bhishma was the commander-in-chief of the Kaurava army. And that day, Bhishma shot an arrow at Arjuna, and this was a very powerful divine arrow. It was an all-destructive kind of arrow. So that is what is sort of shot at Arjuna. Krishna asked Arjuna, when the arrow was coming, Krishna asked Arjuna to do something to counter it. Arjuna said he did not know how to counter that arrow. So what happened was, all of a sudden, the arrow disappeared. Arjuna did not know how to counter it, and no one was involved in this process. But suddenly the arrow disappeared. It just vanished in the sky. The moment it happened, Bhishma got off from his chariot and went to Duryodhana and told Duryodhana that, look, stop the war. There is no point in fighting because Krishna himself has participated in the war. So therefore, there is no point in fighting. Krishna is not our enemy. We are not fighting Krishna. And even if we fight Krishna, what hope do we have to win? So call it off. Call off the war. What Duryodhana did was, he invoked Balram, because Balram had told him that in case Krishna participates in the war, he should invoke him and he would come and settle the matter. When Krishna came to become Arjuna's charioteer, when Krishna left Dwaraka, he told his brother Balram that he would not participate in the war himself. He would not fight for anybody. Balram had asked him not to fight for anyone. He said, no, I am not going to fight for anybody. I am only going there as a witness. I will see how the war was taking place. I will be Arjuna's charioteer, but I will not hold any weapon. So that under those conditions he had come, and Balram had allowed him to go under these conditions. So when Duryodhana invoked Balram, Balram came. He came to the battlefield, and he was very angry. And he said he would kill, he said he would punish Krishna for what he had done. So Krishna said, brother, I have done nothing wrong. I have not done anything. I have not done anything that would that you would consider to be my disobeying what I have done nothing wrong to you. I have kept my promise to you. I have not violated it. He said, how come? Krishna said, ask whoever you wish to ask. Did they see me holding Sudarshan Chakra and destroying that arrow? Has anyone seen me? So Balram went to the Pandavas. No one had seen this. Everybody said they did not see Krishna holding Sudarshan Chakra. He went to Duryodhana. He went to the Kaurava brothers. He went to Karna. He went to everybody. Nobody said that they had seen Krishna using Sudarshan Chakra. He finally went to Bhishma. Balram asked, did you see my brother using Sudarshan Chakra? He said, no. Then he said, you were complaining against my brother, and that is not right. Why are you doing this? You are a liar, and you are leveling charges against my brother in a very in a despicable manner. Why are you doing this? Why did you do that? And then he said, you should not have used such a powerful divine arrow against a human being. Why did you do that? So you committed two crimes. One, by using a divine weapon in a war against the humans, and two, by leveling false charges against his brother. So he said, I would kill you. So Krishna saved the situation. That evening, Vishma said that, look, I didn't see him holding any Sudarshan Chakra, but I inferred. How did you infer? He said that weapon could not be countered by anything except by Sudarshan Chakra. So anyway, that evening, Balram, Arjuna and Krishna met. And Balram told Krishna that, look, I know what you have done. I know that you are the one who destroyed that arrow with Sudarshan Chakra. I did not say it there, but I knew. And I also know that you will protect the Pandavas like this from time to time. You will do this kind of a thing. And each time you do something like this, Duryodhana would invoke me and I will come. And I will be in this position. I do not want to be in this position. I am going. I will go on pilgrimage, you do what you like. Now notice this interesting thing, notice the relationship between Balram and Krishna. Balram knew what his brother had done. Who would know Krishna better than Balram really? He knew what his brother had done. He pretended. On the battlefield, he didn't know. He must have been embarrassed. He pretended that he did not know, and he went from person to person to find out what they had seen. But he knew what his brother had done. He was indulgent. He was forgiving. He loved his brother. He loved Krishna. So, in a quiet moment when there was no one around, Arjuna was there, of course. When Krishna and Arjuna, he told him that, no, I know what you have done. And he forgave him. And he said, now I am going on pilgrimage. In Vyasa Mahabharata, before the war started, Balram went on pilgrimage because he said he had nothing to do with the war. Here, Balram went on pilgrimage during the war. So this is the story. So here, I draw attention to the affectionate relationship between the two brothers. I would also draw your attention to an affectionate relationship between Pandu and Dhritarashtra. It was not like Krishna and Balram, but but in a different way. But look at that, a relationship based on sacrifice. Now, Dhritarashtra could not, Pandu became the king and Dhritarashtra did not become the king in the beginning because Dhritarashtra was blind and considered ineligible to become the king. So Pandu, his younger brother, became the king. Dhritarashtra blamed his fate for this. The elder brother was alive and the younger brother became the king. He blamed his fate for this, and one day he suffered a lot. He suffered a lot of mental agony, and one day he told Gandhari that, look, let us go and commit Jal Samadhi in Prague. So let's go and commit suicide. Jal Samadhi will take in Prague. Gandhari said, no, don't be jealous of your brother. Your brother respects you. You have your brother has a very respectful relationship with you. It's a cordial relationship. So sometimes destiny has its own ways. So you could not become the king. So don't mind. Let's live with that. But Dhritarashtra was very upset, and this Pandu overheard. This Pandu overheard. So when he heard that Dhritarashtra was that upset, he said, I don't want the kingdom. Let Dhritarashtra become the king, and I go to the forest. I will fight the enemies of Hastinapura from the forest. I will work for Dhritarashtra as his servitor, but let Dhritarashtra be the king. So Pandu went to the forest and Dhritarashtra became the king. Consider the relationship between the Pandu and Dhritarashtra. Look at the way in which, look at Pandu's love for Dhritarashtra. His brother felt upset and he heard that, and then he said, the kingdom is not mine. I don't want to be the king. Be the king. This is sacrifice. Now, if the Kauravas and Pandavas were in such a relationship with each other, as between Krishna and Balram, or as between Pandu and Dhritarashtra, the war would not have taken place. So what Sarla has done is, he has projected the alternative model. There is always an alternative model. The alternative model of relationships between brothers is exemplified by Balram's indulgence towards Krishna and by Pandu's indulgence towards Dhritarashtra. And look at the sacrifices each one of them did for their brothers. So if the Pandavas and the brothers had a relationship where one was willing to sacrifice for the other, there would have been no war. That did not happen. But let us also not forget that no matter what anybody could do, the war had to happen, because that was what Krishna was born for. Krishna was born to ensure the destruction of the wicked, the papis, and the victory of the virtuous. Therefore, the war would have taken place. But at a human level, the alternatives were given, were projected by the poet. So, thank you very much.